Well, welcome to the 700 Club. We're going to start with a story that, if it weren't so horrifically tragic what's happening in southern Lebanon, the hypocrisy would be absolutely laughable. The UN Security Council renewed its peacekeeping, I'll put that in quotes, its peacekeeping mission in southern Lebanon. It just renewed it yesterday. In that, they failed to condemn Hezbollah or even mention the Iranian-backed terror group.
Well, meanwhile, the IDF destroyed a terrorist command center inside a West Bank mosque. They found explosives and weapons along with a display honoring terrorists who've attacked Israel. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl reports.
The Israel Defense Forces say they found and destroyed a terrorist command center inside a mosque in the West Bank. IDF drone footage shows displays honoring dead terrorists and equipment to make bombs, as well as several explosive devices. This, as top Hamas official Khaled Mashal is calling for suicide attacks against Israelis. At the United Nations Security Council Wednesday, members renewed the mandate to maintain peacekeepers in southern Lebanon, but failing to specifically mention Hezbollah or condemn the terror group. Despite the UN mission, the peacekeepers have not taken action to stop Hezbollah from launching some 8,000 missiles and drones into Israel the last 10 months.
We call on this council to finally enforce Resolution 1701 in full and to recognize Hezbollah as a terrorist organization.
The U.S. representative at the UN said none of the nations present would put up with what Israel has had to endure.
No member of this council facing a brutal terrorist organization on its border would tolerate daily attacks and displacement of tens of thousands of its own people.
Since the UN forces are not stopping Hezbollah, Israel warned Lebanon that it must do the job itself.
I have a message for the Lebanese people. You and your government have a choice to make. Confront Hezbollah today or watch as your country is dragged into chaos and destruction.
More than 60,000 Israelis are displaced from their homes in the north, forced to flee Hezbollah's almost daily attacks.
When will it be the end of the story? Only when we can bring back security and the residents to their homes safely.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, Israel says it recovered the body of a soldier killed on October 7th and held by Hamas. Some 300 vehicles with families and friends of hostages drove from Tel Aviv to Kibbutz Be'eri, one of the hardest-hit communities, on October 7th. Some ran past the security fence to get closer to Gaza, and others called out to their loved ones in captivity.
I need you to know that I am giving you now the blessing I give you every single morning when I pray for you, and every Friday night. May God bless you and keep you. May God shine his face upon you and be gracious to you.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, let's look at the hypocrisy coming out of the UN. They've had a mandate to keep peace in southern Lebanon for decades, and they haven't observed any of that. They've allowed Hezbollah to get enough weapons where it's roughly equivalent to a European nation state. And how that happened on their watch, and then make no mention of it, as if it didn't exist. But the hypocrisy goes even further in the UN when you look at the number of actions they've taken against Israel and very few actions against any of the Muslim terror states. It's absolutely incredible to me. Then you add into it the International Criminal Court. Who's in charge of that? Who's the chief justice of that court? Well, a Muslim from Lebanon. Who's the chief prosecutor? A Muslim from Great Britain. His parents are from Pakistan. How in the world would you expect there to be any kind of fair trial for Israel, any kind of determination? I hope people are waking up to the double standard, waking up to the hypocrisy, not calling it for what it is. This war is exclusively the fault of Hamas. Hamas started it on October 7th. Hezbollah is now adding into it. If Israel doesn't invade Lebanon, I will be surprised. If this were happening in the United States, if Toronto was sending rockets across to Buffalo, I know exactly what we would do. And why would we not expect Israel to act in the same way? You have to protect the security of your citizens. You have to, if they're taken hostage, you have to get them released. And let me remind everyone, there are U.S. citizens in tunnels in Gaza today being held hostage by Hamas, and it doesn't seem that our government is perturbed about it at all. In other news, while the war in the Middle East continues, Iran is trying to influence the U.S. election. Gary Lane has that story and more from the CBN Newsroom. Gary?
Gordon, Tehran is targeting both the Trump and Harris campaigns with hack attacks. Experts warn that not only will the meddling continue, adversaries like China and Russia are also getting into the game. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke reports.
The FBI describes Iran's activity as increasingly aggressive during this election cycle, and former intelligence official Michael Pregent tells CBN News that's likely because the Islamic regime believes a win by Kamala Harris is in its best interest.
I just think our adversaries are not really worried about this administration, but they are hearing tough language from the Trump campaign. So I would think that our adversaries will continue to, push disinformation and misinformation into our social media.
Microsoft first reported news of this targeted hacking against the Trump campaign and announced their techs have also uncovered election interference attempts from Russia and China.
We should get to a place where our adversaries fear a Democrat president and a Republican president, but now they tend to pick the racehorse.
House Intelligence Chairman Congressman Mike Turner recently blasted the Biden administration for failing to hold Iran responsible for multiple acts.
The administration is both on the hacking side, on the misinformation side, and on the alleged attempt on Donald Trump's life is not holding Iran accountable. There's no red line.
Turner says the administration's silence only emboldens Iran to increase its efforts.
There is not a response that impacts Iran or that has a deterrent effect or holds them accountable. And that, of course, results in increased activity and increased emboldening of Iran to meddle in our elections and to I think, have people at risk in our country.
National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby counters the administration has repeatedly raised concern over Iranian cyber attacks, adding that these recent attempts are nothing new for the regime. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, Caitlin. A Biden administration plan for student debt relief remains on hold. The Supreme Court refusing to allow it to go into effect as several lawsuits make their way through the courts. The plan provided loan cancellation and reduced payments for debt holders based on their income. The estimates of the cost to taxpayers range from $276 to $475 billion. Republican-led states filed the legal challenges. About 8 million people were already enrolled when the courts put the plan on hold. Well, this Labor Day weekend, many Americans will be enjoying the final days of summer outside. Health officials in several states are warning people to protect themselves from mosquitoes. A wet summer has caused a spike in the disease-bearing insects, leading to a spread of 2 potentially deadly viruses. Medical reporter Lori Johnson brings us the details. Meanwhile, the U.S. Surgeon General is sounding the alarm on a new mental health concern, citing parents who are under increasing amounts of stress. Dr. Vivek Murthy released a new health advisory Wednesday. The report shows 48% of parents say their daily stress is often overwhelming. It lists common issues like busy schedules, bad behavior, and lack of sleep, along with new factors like the impact of social media and increasing concerns for children's health and safety. Murthy says parents feel they're bearing the burdens alone and need community and government support to help them cope.
The focus packet.
Back to you, Gordon.
Well, we need to take care of children and the parents of young children. I just left a sleep-deprived couple, my daughter and her husband. They've got now a 10-month-old. And it just was amazing to me that they were trying to maintain these busy lives, and being up at 3 a.m. wasn't helping at all. In all of this, make sure you're protecting your sleep. And without that, you're not going to have a good mood throughout the day, and you're not going to be able to take care of very active toddlers. Now the issue is, how can the community come around? How can a church community come around? How can you have volunteer babysitters? The great news is grandmothers and grandfathers were quite willing and able to help out along the way, but it seemed like there was even more. And to compound it, at this point in time, I can't travel to Seattle tonight in order to take care of it. So it's a compounding problem, and we need to all wake up to it. Again, if you're a parent of a toddler, please protect your sleep.